What I have right now is that I just laid the top onto the piece, and I roughly mapped out where things are going to go. Well, I wouldn't say roughly. I mapped out how it's exactly going to go, and I even marked out where the studs are going to be. Over in this direction is the table saw, and over here the miter saw, and over there is the router table, the router top actually. And with the measurement of the cutouts I'm going to need to do, gave me the chance to actually put exactly where the studs are going to be, which you can see right here. Long stud, 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 stud. So basically I drew them. This is totally all mapped out. I even marked it down on the edges over here, so when I remove the table I know. So I just got to line it up from there to the other side, and so on and so on. The only difficult ones would be the one, this one, and this one, and this one in the middle. I'll just rely on measurements for off this piece just to get that. And it's important to actually do that first before, after doing any notching out. I'm going to have to notch out this section just so I can have access to this, and also down here, because this thing's got to drop down to be flush with the surface 3.5 inches. So basically bring it down here. I'm not going to have much over here, so I'm just going to have to figure something out, rip some pieces, and just to make sure it's flush and re-put it back on. But the important thing to do is make sure at least these pieces are in place before I do any notching. The reason why is if I notch first, the integrity of the top and with the tension on the legs, because if you remember that one or two are kind of off a little bit, they square it up as putting it back in here, but if I cut this away, there's a chance that this can fold itself right back in. So I need some bracing. So that's what the studs in here, it's not just going to give it support from the top, it's going to keep some of the bracing going. And that'll be the next step. I'm going to go ahead and slide this thing off and start adding pieces. Well, there's the upper framework for the top. Before I go ahead and notch it out, as we can see here, here's our opening for the table saw, here's the spot for the miter saw, and here's the spot for the router top. I'm going to go ahead and cut this section out and this section out. This thing looks so braced up, it should not fall out of square. So I'm going to do that and come back. You'll see that in a second. As you can see, just got the parts notched out. The openings for the table saw, did a quick little test fit, fits pretty good. Over here don't really have to test fit the miter saw, it's just going to sit lower. Well, as you can see, there's a top already that looks complete on this table with stuff built in. And if just in case you are wondering why that I didn't show the progress of putting the top together and how I put the saws and all that together and how I measured everything up and just pretty much got to this point, well, I did film it. And at some point during transferring of the data from the camera to the computer, it just vanished out of nowhere. So with some technical difficulty, I'm unable to show you what the progress I did to get to here. And there was some good info on that. So I'm just going to have to kind of just describe step by step from what we last saw, which was basically a complete frame, to the top and how and everything all built in. So from where we last left off, that didn't vanish was you saw the frame cut out of all of this. Well, the next thing I actually did was I mapped out precisely where the studs, where the studs I had on the frame on the top, exactly where they were. I mapped them out on the sheet, on the particle board sheet, which pretty much matches one of those, Well, you know, but for this size. Mapped out the studs, and I mapped this in place. Pretty much I put this, actually I designed this stuff where I wanted to go first, and then pretty much put the studs where they're supposed to go, like here, 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 so on. I'll kind of show you underneath on what I'm talking about. So all I did, so basically it's just drawing it out on the board itself. After I did that, I went ahead and secured the top itself, not the hardboard, but just the particle board top. And then I cutted out my notches for the table saw and for the chop saw. And the reason why I did that, because if you remember that I had to take the ratchet straps and kind of square up the legs and putting the top on, it kind of keeps it mostly squared, because if I were to cut that without putting this on, this thing would have just twisted in so many ways, and it would be a lot harder to get it back straight. So after the top was put on, cut out my notches, then I just went ahead, I got lucky on the table saw and the router top. I didn't really have to like put anything to brace this up, because the top itself already had holes from the legs, and all I had to do was just screw it in there, and it's such a tight fit, it's really going nowhere. And it was kind of like the same thing too also for the table saw. So I got a couple big anchor bolts over there, just kind of resting it on, but I just used a screw up in here and here to hold that in place, and it's pretty good and solid. This one was a little bit more of a challenge because this thing weighs a lot, and again I just had another piece of particle board. So this one was just cut and it's screwed on, if you can see, to the studs itself, and then I put a couple of these 1x1s right there just to help brace it up, to add a little more strength, because it did have some flex to it. After that was done in place, went ahead and, oh yeah, just also for a note, when I installed these, before I put this on, I made sure they were like 1/8 of an inch high, because that's the thickness of this, so it planes flat itself. Same thing too, when I had to measure for this out, I had to make sure the bottom of this planed with that. I did have a little dilemma though, after it was all said and done, when even though putting the top on, and like I said, notching out, keeping the top on to try to keep it all square from folded in, well, I did come back and look, it still had a little bit of a bow still trying to fold in, because that's what these are in place for, because this was really about a 1/2 inch. I just threw my straight edge across, and you can see from here it was like about a 1/2 inch down on each corners. There was, if you were to try to fix that by hand and forcing it up and trying to figure that out, so it was a little bit tough. So, but there was an easy fix to that, which I got one more to do on this table, so I'll kind of show you. But what I basically just did was, let's see, this would be an example, even though this one's already fixed. Sorry, throw that up here. I threw a long straight edge, corner to corner. There was a drop here and a drop here. So I put a little, I won't say my floor jack and a board right up here, and actually, and another 2x4 going this way up here, and all I did was just jack it up, left my level on here, and when after that was in place, once I got it all flat, I went ahead and just pretty much scribe cut 2 studs here and here, and put them in there as more support, and we're good. But because of that, that was from one notch, but we had one more notch that I did cut out, and as you can see here, this one's going to be a little bit different. What I'm talking about, you can see that there is a gap here and here because it's drooping down here. This side is going to be a little bit trickier only because I cannot put my floor jack here to raise this up here because I got my table saw here and I do not want to pull this thing out. It's just not a headache to do. So what I'm going to do on this one to get it back up is going to precisely measure the gap here and here, and then from here down I'll get this measurement, get that measurement, add it up, cut a piece, and I'm going to have to pretty much wedge it up in here and force this back up. Same thing for this one. This one looks not as bad as this one. This one kind of looks about 3/8 and this one looks like 1/8. Or actually this might be 1/4. Either way, I'll figure it out, and then I'm going to brace this one square and that'll be good. And then from there I'm just going to go ahead and belt sand and clean up little overhangs in these corners on this table. And then for the most part this one table is done. I'm actually really pleased with it. The other thing I also noticed is I'm just going to go ahead and, because, well, good example is I did think about how much this thing could turn, because usually these things go to like 45 degrees. This one goes to 60 degrees, and that little adjustment knob which turns the tilt of this kind of hits the side more than expected, only because this hand thing is really big. But lucky for me, all I got to do, I'm just going to replace this with just a nut, and I'll just like wrench tighten it when need be. I don't often have to do the bi-level this way. I mean, it's great to have, but I'll do that just to shorten the gap over here, in which I should be able to allow it to turn more if I need to go past the 45 or whatever. And if anything gets really radical, I'll just take it off and just do it out on the ground or something else. Well, a lot to try to discuss on what happened. Oh, one other thing too that we're going to actually fabricate is when this is not in use and I need a flat part of the flat top of a table without having this. This is so that this can come off and put underneath there. Part of the bummer is of having these now, I lose like wide open space to shove something in there. This should obviously still fit, but just still kind of a bummer. Not stuff, I can't put too much wide stuff in there. But I'm gonna go ahead also and make just a little piece that fits back in here, so it's flush, so when non-use it's just a flatter table. It's just more of a like a insert, which I saved my cuts from here and here just to redo that, which is that extra piece right there. And then of course, as mentioned before, I got to make a spacer for that chop saw, so that way it'll be level over there, since this one stands a little taller. And after I clean up the corners and edges and a little bit of belts, a little bit of sanding, I'm going to go ahead and start working with this one here. And this one's going to take some belt sanding, like I said, just to clean up some space between here and get the more permanent rod put in. Hopefully this one will go easy. The only real issue I kind of see is just the thing flips smooth and not as tight. So, well, I'm going to start on this project. For now, I just rolled the main part of the table outside. I went ahead and cleaned up the corners with the belt sander and actually smoothed the side where it butts up with the other table. I planed that flush, so when they go together they'll be all nice and neat. And I've fixed this part, like I was saying earlier. There was only off a 1/16 of an inch from each other, but that's now all leveled across, so that's good. So as far as now is, this one is done, other than little accessory stuff that I plan on adding, dust collection and power. So we're back at the flip top table, and what I've accomplished so far is I already belt sanded all around the flip top door all the way and all around the frame, and I also palm sanded it and did like a little test flip, and flips pretty good. There's like one or two very minor little tight areas, but what I'm going to do is actually put the axle in and then spruce it up from there. So because with the temporary axle I had in there, you know, it has a little bit of play. In this case, I need to see exactly how it's going to flip and where its final position is, and then I'll know how much I need to clean up. I also went ahead and into the holes where the axle goes, I cut little metal, like little pieces of metal pipe. What it is so that way the threaded rod, which is similar to this, won't wear out and ground and kind of grind out the wood. So I just went ahead and cut some and slipped them in there, which is just pieces of this. I did it through every place where the axle is going to flip through. So you can see through here and here and in here. And then I'm also going to go ahead and give it a little bit of WD-40, the white lithium grease, just to help give a little lubrication in it, and kind of do like a little finger tying. And then the next step would see how it flips and do a little more cleanup. Then I'm going to go ahead and put the top on it, and I'm sure I'm going to have a little bit more planing and belt sanding, just to make sure it flips real good and real smooth. So that's what we're going to go do next. I'm going to go ahead and grease up some of this stuff right here. Just go ahead and give it, if there's any little bit left, give it a little bit. The love on every one of these. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and do that. I also have washers for spacers, you know, one for each on the outside and one for wherever in between the frame and the flip top part. Oh, this is going from this end. So, also what you can't see here is I made 3 marks on this piece and on this piece to remind me on which end is the front and on the top, so it's lined up good. So we'll start by getting this one in. The tricky part, of course, is just dealing with this one hand by yourself. You have help to do it. If you don't, you're like me. Too much pride. This mixture's kind of coming out, but that's fine. What I'll do is let's just go ahead and back here. Move. That's the other thing without having mark on the wheels. He's gonna do whatever the heck he wants. I like this shit. So do that. Oh, you know what? I screwed something up. Screwed something big time up. Screwing something up. I forgot to put the washer in between here and here. Ugh. Good. Pull it out. You know what? It's not real. Unless you show some of the mistakes that you made along the journey. Here, kind of for this side, and it went into this side, and now I gotta figure out on how to push it out and put it back in here. Whoosh, whoosh. Somebody used to say it like that. Ooh. Some type of retard, I guess. Yeah, that was it right there. Okay. Now we got that on. Just going to tighten it. So, let's draw some tightness. Tightness. That. This edge. Marked out some more. And that edge. So this